minutes after 6 o'clock. Yours truly, Sunny Bling in your company alongside Otto Carrington, Joshua C. Mongol, Derek Achong. We're going to have you guys well entertained and informed all the way up until 8 p.m. right here on Slam on 0.5 and Freedom 106.5 FM. Gotta say much thanks to Royal Extra Stout for being a part of our program. Also, Grow Guru. We have that giveaway segment coming up, all courtesy 1212 Grow Shop. As for now, we'd like to get our show on the road, ladies and gentlemen. That's right. We have some special guests that are going to be joining us in studio, like Pastor Dutton. We also have Freetown Collective and more that are going to be joining us inside our program right now, though. Let me introduce my my co-host, or the actual, the real host, I should say, of the program. Joshua C. Mongol and Otto Carrington on the inside. Good evening, guys.
Greetings, Sonny, and greetings, Heights Nation. We're really happy to have Miss Jody Geis-Ramsey joining us from Canada, the Canadian Queen of Pot.
Indian Arrival Day. This one is a happy Indian Arrival Day to Trinidad and Tobago, coming from the Heights team and the Heights Nation. And we're going to have a wonderful show today, Sonny. I mean, we have Derek. Derek is on his way.
Yeah.
And we're going to have a wonderful show today.
All right, so as we heard earlier on there, we have a special guest all the way out of Canada, the Queen of Pot, you say?
Canadian. Queen of Canadian
Pot.
The Queen of Canadian Pot.
Yes, correct, yes.
So you want to make sure I'm putting the Canadian part in there?
Yes, of course, because there are different queens in different countries, eh?
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Well, you know what? Let me welcome Her Majesty to our program this evening. It's a pleasure to have you on our program. Welcome.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
All right. Now, when they call you, my name is Sunny Bling. It's a pleasure to have a conversation with you. And when they say you're the Queen of Canadian Pot, can you break that down for us, please? What does that mean to you?
Well, it's a very nice, high honor to receive, and it's probably based on the fact that my former husband, Mark Emery, was known worldwide as the Prince of Pot. So I would get called the Princess of Pot or the Queen of Pot. He gets called the King of Pot. We might have a lot of history to lay claim to those names, perhaps, but I think it's a little bit silly. It's a little bit fun, kind of like cannabis itself.
Okay. Now, you're the owner and operator of Cannabis Culture Magazine, Cannabis Culture Lounges, the Pot TV Network, as well as Jody's Joint. All right, now you've been an activist since 2004, so we want to hear some words from you in different corners, different aspects. Of course, I'm going to turn over to the guys now. Let Joshua toss some questions your way. So thank you so much for being on the program. How's the weather right now for you?
Oh, it's beautiful, actually. We're pretty lucky right now here in Vancouver on the West Coast. We've got some good sunshine, so flowers are blooming. It's pretty awesome right now.
Nice, man. Thanks for sharing that with us here. Joshua, let's get into it.
Yes, Judy, Canada is, of course, one of the leading countries in the global cannabis industry. I just wanted to get your view of how things are in the Canadian cannabis industry right now and that evolution you'd have seen over the last few years from your perspective, your vantage point.
Well, it's very interesting. It's a mixed bag, you could say. There are pros and cons. The good part is everyone around the world says Canada legalized marijuana, let's do it here. So it's a positive example to set for other countries. The negative is that I'm concerned, and many others are concerned, that legalization here has turned into a corporatization of cannabis. It's really a new form of prohibition in many ways. So on the surface level, sounds awesome. It's true, there are a lot fewer arrests for cannabis possession, but there are still a lot of tough laws. They even increased the punishments and penalties in Canada. It was done in a way almost to keep the existing cannabis industry illegal and create a new industry run by big corporations. And many of the people involved in those corporations used to be police officers and government officials who fought against legalization. So I have a big list of those people on my Twitter profile online. It's got a lot of names of people who I would say are hypocrites. And unfortunately, they have come in and made billions of dollars themselves, while people who are legacy or activist grassroots folks, they're still getting arrested, they're still being charged, and they're still going to court. So my concern about the Canadian model of legalization is that the big executives in the companies here in Canada have gone around the world and are trying to get other countries to copy this model where the original cannabis industry does not get to be legalized, and where a big corporate model comes in and tries to take over the industry. That's a concern, I think, a lot of people worldwide, from Africa to Germany to everywhere in between. We're all worried about the corporatization of cannabis when there's a culture of cannabis and a history of cannabis that needs to be respected and protected.
Judy, hi, Derek Atchong here, just showing the team this evening. I've never been to Canada, but we've always heard about BC Bud being the premium standard. I've studied in England. I had friends from Canada, and when they saw this stuff in England at the time, 10, 15 years ago, they were like, nah, in Canada this would not even fly. But my question is that with legalization in Canada and a regulated industry, is it a situation where what is being sold in the dispensary is of a higher quality, or is it still the garage and backyard and basement growers, still have the stuff that the actual connoisseurs or actual long time, users really want?
Well, it's hard to say because for many, many years before legalization, all of the weed was illegal. And sometimes you would find good growers, sometimes you would find bad growers. The issue with prohibition and criminalization is that when the government says we're going to punish you if you use cannabis or grow it, that means that most people will say, oh, maybe I won't grow it. I don't want to get punished. But you get perhaps organized crime or gangs might then get involved and say, we don't care, we're not scared. And if you're going to increase the risk, you're only making it more valuable. So we'll step in and we'll grow it, but we'll do a really bad job. Like, we don't care about the consumers. We don't care about the culture. We care about money, and government laws make cannabis worth money. So let's do the cannabis thing. So when the government says gangs get involved, it's because of their own laws. But the majority of growers in Canada, proven through the Justice Department, the majority are peaceful, nonviolent people, just regular Canadians who grow a plant that they love. So dispensaries that came about before legalization, they would often self-regulate. They would meet the growers and say, hey, you're doing a great job or you're not doing a great job. And they could refuse the bad weed and get the good weed. But when the government legalized in Canada in 2018, all of those growers remained illegal, regardless of whether they were good or bad. And the government licensed giant corporate farms, or you could call it factory farms, for weed. The problem with those big models is that they had a lot of problems in the news about being moldy or contaminated. People were getting sick. There were class action lawsuits. So there's a big history of the legal cannabis actually being unsafe and dangerous. But the government is saying, no, only legal weed is safe. So make sure you only buy legal so we get our cut from the finances. It's a little bit unfair because on the legal side, it started with big corporate farms, but now there are smaller producers that are getting legal, they're getting licensed. The issue is it's extremely expensive and prohibitive to get into that industry. And we're seeing that around the world, that these small farms, the local mom and pops, they would love to get legal and licensed so that they don't get punished by the law. But the government says you need $1 million to start. And not many people have that. That's a very high bar. So you have legal weed today that's bad and cheap, or good and high quality. I'm concerned that the prices are still too high. They're prohibition prices. Cannabis is a weed. It grows wild and free. The human population on Earth, we've been cultivating it for hundreds and thousands of years for medical, spiritual, and recreational purposes. So you're going to get good and bad weed like you get good and bad food out of home kitchens and corporate kitchens. You just have to stop punishing people with the law and allow the smaller artisan growers to get a step ahead. It's just very difficult when big corporate cannabis has all the money, the lobbying power, and in many cases, those companies are run by former government government officials and law enforcement officials. So the small-time grower needs to be protected when cannabis is legalized in Canada and everywhere. We still have a lot of work to do.
Jody, this is Otto here. Just as you know, listening to what you just said, I mean, it sort of piqued my interest in the sense of what does the Caribbean do? Because we are seeing the same type of behavior where we're seeing the big pharma, the big companies, you know, at looking at coming in, and we have seen it in places like Jamaica. We have seen it in places like St. Vincent, where you have the international, which is good for the economics. But what for me is my concern is those who may have been doing it under persecution are now left out the equation and still may have to function with some level of illegality. But what would you say from your perspective as an advice for the listeners here? Because we have listeners not just in Trinidad but in the region, and people who may be interested in getting licenses to do different parts of the cannabis industry. What advice you would give to them, you know, from seeing that where Canada is so advanced and you have been involved in the industry since it was legalized or in certain parts of Canada?
Well, I would say you must defend the small growers. You must defend the cultural heritage. We saw in Jamaica, for example, that they are obviously, we all know Jamaica is associated with the marijuana culture. I love it there myself. It's a beautiful place. But what happens is when the licensing is only given to a few people, that does prevent, obviously, the smaller growers from getting into that industry. And, you know, maybe the big growers can handle all the production, but it's still not quite fair, because the difference between Canada and the Caribbean, for example, is that we don't really have any indigenous cannabis here. We've grown hemp historically, but cannabis comes from near the equator around the world, from the sativa to the indica. We know that many countries around the world, cannabis is part of their heritage. It's part of their culture. It's in their lifeblood. And that makes it even more offensive that a big corporation from North America would go there and say, we get to grow it, you don't. Buy our weed, pay taxes, and those taxes will be used to keep punishing you and excluding you. That's nonsense. That's not fair. That's unjust. So my advice would be to very seriously defend your community and culture there. It could be done in the framework of how the entire world, even though we're becoming more global and interconnected, there's a strong push for decentralization, whether it comes to food production or energy production or producing your own clothing and livestock and farming. I think you can make the argument that factory farm cattle or plants or anything is less of a quality. It's got less authenticity, and people should be moving away from that. They should be trying to grow their food locally, grow their ganja locally, make their clothing locally. So the argument could be pushed that business is good. We are not against business. We're not against money and economic growth. We need that. But if the money and the economic growth is only in the hands of a few corporate people or government, everyone else is excluded. And then what happens is that not only do you deny the right to grow to the smaller farmers, but there's also a suppression of the cultural benefits that could turn into economic benefits, meaning tourism, lounges, all the cultural associations through festivals and concerts. There are so many things related to cannabis that could be celebrated and explored and expanded on. But when the government says marijuana is okay for us to handle, but not for you, it's still a form of prohibition. And in that way, they prohibit the culture and the community and the growth and the spirit of cannabis that is so integral in the plant. It's about bringing people together and about freedom of the mind and body. It's not about restrictions and limitations and prohibitions. So the best way to do it is just to insist that as human beings and as a culture, you have the right to defend a plant that gives more benefits than causes harm. It's a tough battle, though. We know through big corporations, they go all over the world. They destroy indigenous communities and steal their land and resources. And that's a big problem. It's hard to push back against that. But you can appeal to the hearts of the people And hopefully, if there's any heart in a corporation, you can appeal to them that it benefits everyone to allow all to participate, to have fairness, inclusion, equality. That matters. Otherwise, you're just getting a new form of prohibition where the government corporate mobsters sell all the weed and everyone else goes to jail. That's not fair, that's not right, and that's not what legalization should be.
Loving this conversation so far. We want to stick up in it right there and take a quick commercial break. We're going to return in about 2 minutes time, Jody. So thank you very much for being a part of the program. We really enjoy your input this afternoon or this evening with us. Of course, guys, on the panel as well, you'll stay tuned for some more. This is Height. Remember, you can give us a call at 624-1005, 623-5001. We're also live on Freedom 106.5 FM, and you can also send us a WhatsApp at 707-SLAM.
Slam 100.5 FM, Freedom 106.5.
Welcome back to our program. This is Heights, where knowledge grows, of course. We're inside our Royal segment brought to you with the kind compliments of our sponsors, Royal Extra Stout. Live on Slam 100.5 and Freedom 106.5 FM. We're speaking with the Canadian queen of cannabis. Guys, take it away.
So Judy, you were saying a little earlier that with because right now Trinidad is in a situation where we are waiting our authority to be established and the regulations that will go with it with medical use in Trinidad. But you were saying earlier that prices, in terms of prices, that sometimes with the legal market, prices are more than how it was before with the black market.
It's definitely a problem in Canada, and even worse, the government decides, there's billions of dollars in that industry. Why don't we take that money? So almost half of all the money from Canadian legal growers is going in tax to the government. They can't even afford to pay it. Many of those companies are defaulting. It's a big crisis when the government comes in and says, let's keep the prices high so we can all make a lot of money. That's not the right way to go. There should not be prohibition-based prices in a legal industry. They need to make it more viable. They don't need to flood the market with weed. But what boggles my mind is the weed is already there. The cannabis already exists. It's when we say legalize it, we're talking about it, the cannabis that's already growing. You don't need to create a whole new industry. So when they up the prices and they increase the regulations and the cost of licensing, it's just a new form of prohibition. We need to get rid of that. And I've seen that in Trinidad and Tobago, you have the Cannabis Control Authority waiting to be created. I think it's 4 years now since it was supposed to launch. I think there's an activist actually going and doing a protest about this because they're saying it's ridiculous. We're still waiting this long for some approval, and we have to make sure that the cost of getting legal is accessible. That's a huge, important step. So I'm glad to see there's some activism still going on, and it's a lot easier to try and at least take step by step to fix things when they're wrong. But if you can come in at first with really good policy, that's much better than trying to chip away at bad policies after the fact, like we're doing here in Canada. But step by step, you take what you can get and you always ask for more.
And Jody, I know you as an advocate, you are well aware of these dynamics that are quote unquote behind the scene, but do you get the impression that the average consumer is aware of some of these issues that the big corporate companies are dominating and pulling and drowning out the small-time growers, or are they just content to be smoking legal weed at this time and caught up in that sense of euphoria?
That's a bit of a tragedy, I think, here in Canada, is that for many years, and in the United States, for that example, they legalized first in Washington and Colorado. But what happened is the language became a problem. For many decades, activists said, legalize cannabis, legalization march around the world. A lot of it was focused on we need to legalize it. And then the question came, okay, well, how? How do you legalize it? And that became very difficult because suddenly people had different ideas. And instead of being in one direction of just a concept, we needed to come up with the devil in the details. And that started to create divisions. Some people said you have to hold out for the best laws you can get. And some people said, take what you can get. Like anything is better than nothing. It's just been challenging here, I think, because the Canadian public says it's legal, done, wipe your hands clean, we're finished, good job, everybody. And people say that to me a lot too. They say, thank you, Jody, you did great work, it's legal, you must be so happy. And I am happy in some ways. Again, the message of legalization leaves Canada and inspires the rest of the world. But I'm a little sad because there are so many issues. Medical cannabis access is being eliminated in Canada. Medical dispensaries are not legal. We have advocates who open medical dispensaries and they're getting arrested and charged and going to court. And before, the punishment was 7 years maximum for cannabis crimes. Now it's 14. They doubled the punishments, even though they said it was being legalized. So it's a very strange thing to have the mental idea and the public at large saying we legalized it. And yet there are people like me and others who are saying, hey, there are a lot of problems. You're not allowed to advertise it. You're not allowed to have lounges. You're not allowed medical stores. People are still being fired from their jobs and refused housing because of cannabis. There's still a stigma. There are still prohibitions. But that's a difficult thing to say when everybody wants to just celebrate the positives. So it's a strange dance to be in the middle of that, where you celebrate the good and yet you have to point out the bad. And I don't want to be accused of saying, I told you so, or complaining all the time, but you can't fix something if you don't say it's broken. If you don't point out the problems, how are you going to repair them? So it is interesting that the word legalization has changed, and people are just accepting that the work is done when it's not. So it's hard to keep the focus on that. A lot of Canadians, even myself, you could just go to a weed store anywhere. There are stores all over. They have a lot of product. It's accessible and normal, but in a way, it's kind of boring because the government took away the culture. They took away the spirit. They took away the community that made cannabis so special. And now it's just another product being sold. So that makes me a little bit sad because I believe in the cannabis culture, not just the magazine and the company I run, but the actual global movement of people who identify with the plant. So it's an interesting dance, again, because when it's legal and there are events for the ordinary Canadians to go to, that's great. They're being introduced to something wonderful. But for the rest of us, the people who have been in the trenches, the people who have defended this plant and fought for it, it just doesn't feel quite the same. But if I had to make a decision whether to have legalized it or not in Canada, the way it is right now, I would accept this. I would accept where we are, and I am going to continue to advocate for change. But I am a little concerned that people are ignoring the problems, and the same model is being exported to countries around the world, and they're facing the same problems. We're seeing it all over, and I hope that the culture can survive the corporatization of cannabis.
All right, you know what? We want to thank you so much for taking your time this evening, Jody, to share with us. And you have a wealth of knowledge. Personally,
Yes,
I think you speak of a future Trinidad and Tobago. To be quite honest, I don't know. I'm dead serious. The things that you say, the things that you mention. No, I talking about in the earlier when she made her intro and she spoke about the new corporate cannabis as opposed to those who have been there before. I think what I'm hearing is a lot of what is actually developing worldwide. Meaning the traditional folks that have been there and believe that this is for them and they are going to benefit the most out of it have no idea what's about to come and it's going to blow straight over our heads. I think that is exactly what it is. Exactly the way you made it sound in Canada. I think that's what we're going to be facing here.
Of course.
So defend the plant and defend the people, like stand up for our culture. And I hope I can visit in a few years and see a flourishing cannabis culture that's legal and profitable and helping the people of the country, not just the corporate powers of the country.
That is fantastic. And
well, definitely. I mean, Jody, you're always welcome to the Caribbean. I mean, anyway, in the Caribbean, we will try to facilitate you. And make sure your experience is utmost warm and best.
And of course, whenever we touch down in Canada, we have to make sure and give the Queen a call. We have to go check
I'm
out
going to say, come to Vancouver, come to visit us and experience not just the beautiful city, but the roots of the cannabis legalization movement in Canada right here. Would love to have you and make things better for everybody.
When would you say is a perfect time for a traveler to make their way to Vancouver?
Oh, definitely now throughout the summer. If you like the rain, winter's great. But if you want to see a beautiful city, definitely the summertime. It's magnificent.
And when you say the summertime,
Canada's a pretty special place. It's a giant country. There's a lot to see. But Vancouver is like the California of Canada. We've got palm trees here even. So it's a very pretty place.
Last question on that note there. Let's talk temperature. You said it's summertime and it's pretty good now. But we know Canada is naturally cold. Sure. So talk to us. What kind of temperature are we looking at?
Oh, right now, Celsius, we're getting like 20-degree days for the springtime. In the summer, you get like 28. We do have heat waves. It got up to like near 40, but it's pretty unbearable. But if you do like the cold, I mean, our snowy winter season is beautiful too. I love that as well. It's part of being Canadian. And you get the nice contrast between the cold and the hot. Really makes you appreciate those beautiful sunny days, though, that's for sure.
All right, I like the sound of that. So thanks again for sharing with us here this evening on Heights, and hopefully we get to link up with you sometime in person. The queen of Canadian pot, ladies and gentlemen. There she is. She's smiling away. Like the energy. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks so much, Judy. Take care.
Thank you so much.
All right. We also want to say special thanks to our sponsors, Royal Extra Stout, for a royally refreshing and delicious experience of flavorful stout. Drink Royal Extra Stout. Stay with us after the break. We will be joined by Seventh-day Adventist Pastor Clive Dutton. That's certain to be an interesting conversation, given that the Pastor Dutton is known to be outspoken against cannabis use. All right, we will open up the lines so you can engage with the pastor on the subject. Then later on, we're going to be holding a meds with Freetown Collective. You'll stay tuned. We'll be back with some more on Heights.
To love, laugh, and live happily ever after.
Good evening and welcome back to our program, the Caribbean's #1 cannabis industry and culture radio show, Heights. Remember to join the Heights Nation by following Heights on all major social media platforms on TikTok, Instagram, Spotify, YouTube, and Facebook. There you will find exclusive Caribbean cannabis culture content. We are now joined in studio by Seventh-day Adventist Pastor Clive Dutton. Typically, we have guests who are pro-cannabis, but we believe it's important to have conversations with people with differing views and perspectives. Last week we actually had Sergeant J.C. Small. I don't want to give him the wrong title, you know. So the TTPS was on our program last week. This week we have Pastor Dutton, is a well-known religious leader and philanthropist who works closely with young people in communities. Now, Pastor Dutton is known for speaking out against crime and also cannabis use. And of course, we thank him for taking some time to join us on our program this evening. Good evening, Pastor. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, nice to be here.
How are you doing?
Pretty good, working hard as ever.
All right, well, it's a pleasure to actually speak with you one-on-one. What I mean, like on the program, I've seen you on television and in different forums, you know, voicing your opinion and your concerns. And you don't hold back, if you want to put it loosely.
Thank you.
You know, so thanks for taking the invitation to come to this program. And I hope you do have a good view on the program, meaning this is not a weed show. It's not just a show we did, but it's designed to say, oh, you come and smoke weed and decriminalize. No. This is actually a program to discuss where are we heading with marijuana and cannabis in the Caribbean and the world, because we done third world, we behind. All right, meaning that everything else has been taking place around the world with a certain kind of speed, and we are now trying to catch up on that. Are we going about it the right way, the wrong way? Does it make sense? Does it not? You know what I mean? So these are the conversations that we're having, and we're encouraging people from all over the world that are ahead of us to come in and speak with us. We actually just spoke to the queen of Canadian pot, as they call the lady. They're big in Canada, you know what I mean? Yeah. So my point is, we need to speak to people from all over. We spoke with the Minister of Agriculture out of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. He's been on the program this time and last season. We spoke to the folks out of Antigua and Barbuda who are doing pretty well in terms of growing cannabis and producing and whatnot. So here you are this evening. Welcome to the program. What is your opening monologue? I don't even want to ask you a question. Where would you start on a topic like this? Marijuana in TNT.
I think we're going down a hell road. I think it is horrible. I have been fighting this for the past 38 years. Mm-hmm. I have seen young people destroyed. A lot of experts, and secular experts too. Of course, you have the debate is strong on both sides, but a lot of experts have shown where, especially for adolescent use, perhaps in the last 20 years, the research is showing something different in terms of adolescent use. If I should quote Jody Gilman, she was talking about the damage to the part of the brain that deals with motivation and learning. And I want to emphasize that in the limited time that we have this evening. A lot of experts have spoken about the issue of amotivational syndrome. In the late 1970s, Dr. Gabriel Nahas from New York State Medical University had a lot to say about the damage to the white blood cells and the reduction of the immune system. And he said if you're smoking for 5 years, approximately twice a week, you would experience a 47% reduction in terms of the immune system. This girl, Jody, who is an assistant professor at Harvard University, and I'm emphasizing Harvard University, because I'm speaking here particularly about the damage done to the adolescent brain and to the heart and to the white blood cells, and especially the psychological damage is enormous. And she said, because I have been trumpeting this issue of marijuana taking away the ability of the teenager to be motivated, to be focused on a goal, to be consistent. I have spoken ad infinitum about that. And here's this lady, coming up now and saying the reason for, because people have spoken about marijuana smokers and teenagers and they drop in the dopamine in the brain and the destruction, not only damage the receptors with the delta-9 THC, but also the disappearance of the receptors. And she's very strong on that. And she's the one, I think, one of the first individuals to come up with why, in terms of what drives this destruction and pushes the young people on to display the symptoms of their motivation and symptoms, not setting goals, not interested in going anywhere. And she talked about the damage to the nucleus accumbens. And that was in 2019, which is just approximately 4 years ago. I have attacked both the PNM and UNC for decriminalizing. All right? They were talking about it. And I understand. I don't know. I could be wrong. I could be corrected by the one to come on any of you. But I don't think anybody come out of jail yet. So when Harari was talking about that, the amount of people will come out of jail, etc., etc. My position has been, you don't have to put people in jail for 2 joints and 3 joints. Well, of course, you could have much more than that right now, since it's legalized. But I was saying, tickets...
And we have to be careful with the word. It's actually decriminalize. Decriminalize and legalize is 2 different parties, to be honest.
But one is a gateway to the other.
Well,
all right?
But we're on the gateway, but we didn't cross the threshold yet.
Yes.
To be fair. You know what I mean?
We didn't cross it. You ask the average young person, what is the difference between that? And they will tell you there's hardly any difference.
No, because
that is the problem that we have right now. I told Paul Richards, I told the independent senators, I thought they were weak, because what you have right now is a crisis in terms of the teenagers in the society.
Mm-hmm.
I am talking to principals. I do 14 graduations every year, and last year I spoke to a principal in East West Corridor, and we have a lot of young people pushing drugs in schools, including ganja, including cocaine.
The police officers
and
spoke about that last week.
That is a crisis of gigantic proportions. And I would never, people tell me about tomorrow's world, no tobacco day, I believe. And I hope one day they will be brave enough and courageous enough to have a world no marijuana day. Roger Alexander asked me on the program Beyond the Tape, what is if I was in charge, if I would ever attempt to remove that decriminalizing. I said, of course, I support that completely, because I see the damage that it is doing to our young people, and we can't escape that. And I've seen that damage. I am 74 years older. I was in Form 5.
You look good for 74.
Yes, no marijuana, you see. I must tell you that.
Have you ever smoked a joint? You ever smoked a joint before? You ever, in your young boy days, never pull out one joint?
Never smoke and drink. Never.
Pastor D, you never pop one good?
Not one.
As a man at 70-something, you would have been passed through the days of the Bob Marley. You trying to tell me you here stirred up and you never pop a joint?
Never.
Okay.
And you see, part of that is the spiritual upbringing and how they values from appearance.
Okay.
And that is important. And when the home breaks down, you have all this chaos in the society. Some of that gang violence in the secondary schools is over that too, No doubt that. Because the guys are pushing it in the school. one principle, and I want to make sure I say
Don't
this
call the
before I
name, don't call the
finish.
principle
No,
name.
I
Okay.
won't do that. I won't put all you in trouble.
Not me, you.
Next week.
I call
But
first.
one principal, I went to do his graduation, and he said the principal of an adjacent school in the corridor called him. By the way, he called him from a school that I taught in. I taught science in junior secondary schools, in secondary schools in this country. So I'm not a neophyte when it comes to the science of the thing, and that is what drives me to do the research I am doing. He said, here's the principal,
that called him, yeah.
a half a mile away, told him that there's a assistant gang leader and drug dealer in the school. Is a complaining principal, telling the principal where I went to do the graduation that he's co-opting guys both in the gang trade and the drug trade. And it is naive to think that you have a proliferation of gangs, or the proliferation of ganja and cocaine user, because that is the oxygen of a lot of these gangs, apart from the gun trade, of course. So I am saying we are not real. We are being a lot naive. And Mark Gold, who is the #1 addictionologist in the world, says when the perceived dangerousness of a drug decreases, the usage increases.
I can agree with that.
And
That
that
sounds
is
right.
what you are seeing right now in the society. And not just Trinidad. I went to Canada, I went to Holland. And I mean the Holland psychiatrist.
Yeah, but the citizens in Holland, the children, that not proven in Holland though. In Holland, they don't have those problems. It's the tourists they have the problems with coming in and wilding and stuff like that. But they do have excessive marijuana use amongst children in Holland. That's a bad example. And let me jump in straight away. We do not.
But I went to Holland recently, so I could oppose you on that. I
no,
looked
no,
through
but-
paper. I was
Okay, so
there,
you went to see drug.
and
You
they
said
have a
schools,
lot
okay,
of things.
no problem.
It's in the schools, of course.
No, but
in
it
Holland.
has always been in the schools, though. That's a reality. That has always been there. But the thing is, we don't in any way in the show advocate for any childhood use. I mean, in my personal view, it should be until they're 21 if you want to make that decision or not. Much like with alcohol and gambling, which I have problems with personally. I know you do as well also too. But
Of course.
what we're talking about here, we do not condone. I mean, what we spoke with the police officer last week about was how do we address that it being in the schools and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, adult use with responsible adults within a legalized, decriminalized system of purchasing it in the dispensary. What's wrong with that? Just like if somebody wants to go into the rum shop and buy alcohol.
Well,
I mean, again, you might have your personal views, but we have to respect the personal choice of adults as well.
Well, alcohol is horrific. I mean, I had an uncle who died from cirrhosis with the liver, and his only drug he used alcohol. So I'm not here to defend alcohol. I mean, the legalizing of alcohol and tobacco and the danger that it has. And I am thinking that Trinidad, we are sometimes getting on very crazy and silly when it comes to this thing. Because this history of the defense of tobacco is equivalent now to the history of the defense of marijuana. In this, and there's been a cover-up thing. And by the way, it's the money.
Let me ask you, when you say the history, you just literally compared marijuana and tobacco. So I want you to kind of clear that up for me a little bit. So you said, when you said the history of tobacco, and could you clear that up?
All right, so that you have people tell you mustn't smoke.
Right.
There's a radio station who says that, but that is not as strong enough. Tomorrow I could tell you, I go into a number of schools, you know, especially the one in USC, and they have a lot of people coming in there. But for example, people think Delta-9 THC tetrahydrocannabinol is the only psychoactive ingredient and the only damaging substance in the marijuana. But let me tell you something, and let me tell him also that it affects young people and it affects adults too. Of course, some adults, the younger you use it, the harder it is to control the addiction later on. In anything, including pornography.
Yeah,
The younger you use
I
it.
agree with that too.
All right, let me go to something else here. Marijuana has benzopyrene, which is a known damaging carcinogenic substance, which attacks the p53 gene in the human cell. All right, it does that.
What did 50
But you know something,
body, by the
it
way?
controls you know what cancer is all about, right? It's the explosion of, you know, the big overgrowth of cells and what have you. That is what cancer is all about. But what it does, the benzopyrene in the marijuana does the same thing and perhaps even worse in terms of the p53 gene. And I am saying that we should do a lot more work on UTT and USC in the research on this thing.
Are you willing to acknowledge the medical benefits of cannabis based
Whenever
on
there are
scientific
medical benefits, I have no problem with that. where there are medical benefits and proven clinical trials. And I want to quote the Nigerian doctor on that, proven clinical trials. I have no problem with whether it is for Parkinson's disease, whether it's for glaucoma. So I come from a line of glaucoma in terms of, and I'm talking about smoking it to cure that, talking about the medical extracts you get from the ganja.
So you're okay with the medical
Once there are proven clinical trials about the proven use of marijuana, I have no problem with that.
So technically, so we can agree, more or less, from what I'm hearing, just want to make sure. So we can agree that the medical use of cannabis is not an issue for you.
No, once there are proven clinical trials and it's proven, yes.
We use it as medical to assume that it has already been trial and these things. We don't want to class anything as medical that hasn't been certified. So we more or less go in over the line that once it is medically tested, tried and proven, that's okay in the dotting.
Yeah, that's a medical use of the thing.
So then, Pastor, in the state in justifying the setup of the industry, we say it's a medical industry. It's not a recreational industry. So then, if you have issue with the industry itself, isn't that
But what has Trinidad done here into the decriminalizing it? Isn't it for recreational use particularly?
Right now?
No, it's...
Well, okay, no. So what we have is a system where, I understand where you're coming from, but there's no recreational use. The cannabis authority is going to regulate medicinal marijuana and dispense it for once you get a prescription from a doctor and stuff like that, you will qualify. And
so what is the issue of growing 4 plants in the house? That's for medical use?
No, but that is
be honest with me. You have to be honest with me.
But no, I am being honest. But in terms of recreation, the law, the gray area is that basically you could have 30 grams for whatever purpose whatsoever. It could be for
yes, it's recreational use.
It's recreational use. It's recreational use.
Until the law get put into work, you telling me go and play hopscotch in my backyard. Yes, it's recreational use, damn it. I saying that.
But what's wrong with that?
Hold on.
Freedom of
Excuse
choice.
me, I never said it was wrong. What I said is answering the question. Yes, it's recreational use until
yes.
But
why do we avoid the critical research that these are the damage to the brain and the damage to the cells and the damage to the heart and damage? Why we avoid that?
What I want to say, right?
Let's get both sides of the picture.
Now hold on, and you're gonna stick up in there because I'm gonna allow the guys to come in and answer you fully on that side of it, right? However, the reality is one of our callers we would have had, one of our guests that we would have had in the program from New York a couple of weeks ago, and she mentioned to us basically that as much as we highlight a lot of people being able to use cannabis for recreational purposes, like how you would put it, as in boys, only recreation, right? What they would have already realized from general customers that come in, the people who come with concerns, in most cases in adults, I'm not talking about the teenagers and the glad ones who get involved, but in most cases as adults, the folks that go to the shops and purchase, they all come with a reason, in most cases. So a man would say, boy, I work really hard, I have problems sleeping, I have depression. So in other words, in most cases, what you tend to see over the counter are people who come with a case. So you may deem it as recreational, yes, but in most cases, it is going towards something. You know what I mean? This helps my anxiety. It helps my, you know what I mean? So this is what, this is international studies as well as in what we would have heard in terms of what they have realized so far. As much as recreation is a big word being tossed around, the majority of people that walk into a smoke shop on a given day as adults come in because they have something they are trying to treat, basically. What about that?
I am dealing this evening with the tremendous damage it is doing to the young people and young adults, which has been proven scientifically.
I agree with that.
I don't quote no Bible prophet here,
Yeah.
I quote people who belong to my church. I don't know they are Christians or Hindus or Muslims. I don't know and I don't care.
Yeah.
But I am saying we are playing with a tiger here. All right? And it's destroying a lot of our young people.
But Pastor,
I am this for 40 years and I am doing the research too. And my master's in this, in public health.
Okay.
So I ain't just come with theology and Bible. I'm dealing with facts
You
here.
ain't talk Bible yet.
And I am saying that we have a challenge on our hands and we mustn't neglect to admit, we mustn't be in denial on this. This is a challenge.
All
and
right.
just all you to say not addictive and everything else, it's the same thing coming up now with this marijuana.
Let's hear it.
Pastor Otto here. Just a question. I'm hearing the concerns that you're raising, which I am not invalidating in any way or fashion. But what do you think is the solution to solve this? Because clearly you are seeing it from a different side of the coin, and a lot of people may not see it because you have been doing a lot of community work, and as you say, within schools.
I run a center,
communities.
so it's a marijuana addict city center, right? I run a center. I run a drug rehab center in this country, in Matura. So I'm not talking off my head. I am dealing with challenges. I go to homes. We have our outpatient program. where former addicts to marijuana and cocaine are going to homes. So I am in the middle of the game, you know. I'm just talking, I read a book, or I read a research. I'm dealing with people. I am going to schools. I go to at least 40 schools a year.
Now, let me ask you this.
All over the Caribbean.
In your case, because of the way the world is structured at this time, your voice may be in the minority.
Of course, and
Right.
I'm aware of that.
And no, of course, and that's one point. Your voice at this time, because of what is happening around the world, may be in the minority. What do you think is being missed the most out of your voice in this time, when everyone seems to be shouting harder than you are? What do you think, if it's one thing you would like the people to really hear out of all that's taking place? Like, yo, y'all are missing this point. What's that point?
Well, I believe, let me come to this, is your spirituality now. I think we are failing when it comes to helping youth and teenagers, especially, make decisions. I have said over and over, to make a choice, great choices, great memories, poor choices, poor memories. And I've come up with a rhyme. To make a great choice, you have to inspect, detect, reflect, select, and then you could expect. And I compound the rhyme by saying, when you inspect, that's the examination. When you detect, that's the information from the examination. When you reflect, that's a meditation, and I have a way of hitting my ball here that students love to see me do. When you select, that's the determination after the meditation on the information, when you have great expectations. Now, I am saying that what is missing is that we need to have more media programs like that when you could present both sides of the picture.
Correct.
And I am not being in any way extreme or fanatical here. I am dealing with a problem I deal with every day in the schools and in my rehab center. I have seen some of the most talented young people blown away by the issue of marijuana use.
Would you say that you're pleased with this forum that you had here today? We were fair, we were biased here.
I think you all were very fair. You gave me a chance to speak my mind. Nobody shoot me here, you know what I mean?
Nice. I appreciate that.
And I will come back again.
That's my point, because that is what we wanted to gather from not just your person, but any guest that we have on the program. Your view is your view. You didn't come here to support what you think the program is about.
I didn't even know what the program is all about.
Well, right, Heights is basically where knowledge grows.
Well, I hear in the name.
And so it's Heights where knowledge grows, and the program is knowledge around Caribbean, the growing Caribbean cannabis industry. Are we going in the right place, the wrong place? So we need everyone's voice at this time.
Definitely.
And we appreciate having you come in here this evening and share with us.
And let me tell you something, we must put more value in our young people. That's where I think we're making the mistake.
Yeah.
We must place more value in the young people.
Watch me, since going through the pandemic, I saw a lot of young people on the wayside, because not everybody was able to access online schooling and these things.
Sure,
and I saw a lot of young people falling off during the pandemic. And I say, coming out of that pandemic, we have a whole group as fully done. Going to be running around the place here right now. And the way the crime and everything that's happening in this country right now, to me, reflects heavily on the past couple of years that we have lived.
Before I leave, I want to make 2 points, if you don't mind.
Please.
In 30 seconds.
Sure, 2 points are yours.
Number one, national service must become a reality in this country.
Agreed.
True.
I feel so, and I feel we must, that's number one. And the issue of, I didn't say religion, but spiritual values must be taught in that program also. We have too many young people suffering from that same motivational syndrome and hanging loose on the block and getting involved in negative acts. Well, a lot of young people grow up in loveless and godless societies, and being religion didn't make it good either, because we have been poor representations of the man. What Gandhi said? Gandhi said, "Is Christ I love, is Christians I don't like." And that is a serious statement. It's an indictment against religion.
Thank you so much for being here.
God bless. God bless.
Pastor Dutton. Well, you have any more questions? Only about one question. You're good.
I have no problem with that. It should be in schools at all.
Nice, man. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Pastor Dutton on the program with us here, guys. This is Heights where knowledge grows. The phone lines are blazing right now. Let me take one call really quick from a panel. Let me see what's going on inside here. Let me see who we have. Good evening. You're live. Hello. The phone lines are blazing right now. Hi, good evening.
Hi, good evening.
Welcome to the program.
Thank you. I just want to tell Pastor that
you know what the room
he hit the nail and he had 200%. Right? Where I work is dealing with young adolescents, and I can tell you for sure that you actually know when these boys are smoking to when they stop smoking. And that is my comment.
You see the difference?
Yes, totally.
Thanks a lot for your contribution, and stay tuned. We have some more on the way, boy. Quick commercial break. When we come back, Freetown Collective in the building and much more. Of course, we have that Grow Guru segment coming up, all courtesy 1212 Grow Shop. that you don't want to miss. And also Nicole Bafong, she's going to be joining us online as well too, so don't you move a muscle. This is Heights, where knowledge grows. We do hope that you guys are enjoying the program on this Indian arrival day. We know it's a holiday, some people looking for zest and party and music and vibe, but you know what? We're committed to bringing you guys this program each and every Tuesday evening at 6 p.m. So thanks a lot for being here. Quick commercial break. We're going to come back with some more.
To love, laugh, and live happily ever after. Wedding.
Welcome back to our program. This is Heights, where knowledge grows, right here on Slam on 0.5. And we're also coming to you guys live on Freedom 106.5 FM. My name is Sonny Bling, and of course, we're joined by Derek Chung, Joshua C. Mongol, Otto Carrington. And now, we got some specially invited guests. We have the Freedom Collective team on the inside. We actually have Lou Lyons on the inside representing this evening. Welcome to the program. How you doing? What's going on?
I'm doing great, man. I love the program so far.
Well, you just heard, you just got to take in Pastor Dutton. And let me read a quick message on that. Someone says, hi, it's the conversation the pastor should have is education and guidance of the younger generation. And that's a whole segment by itself. Clearly, he has a really big heart when it comes to the young people. They take a real big space in his life as the future. And I can't disagree with him on that at all. But you're here now. Talk to us from a musical standpoint, cultural standpoint, cannabis, the future of cannabis in the Caribbean, even here in TNT. What's your feel? What's your view? Like a general opening.
The time too short to talk about cannabis, man. Because we end up fixating on cannabis use in terms of smoking instead of having a broad, holistic conversation on it. And that's what I'm against. I am against cherry picking the problems that you have with cannabis as a drug and not looking at it as a product, as an agricultural produce, and how the society at large could benefit beyond smoking.
Yeah.
That's the conversation we need to start having.
Gentlemen, come in.
I just want to start off with, I want to speak to you from, let's start off with a creative standpoint. Do you yourself use cannabis to create and, you know, the kind of lovely music we heard just now? You'll speak from deep within, your self-love, the aspects of spirituality. Does cannabis and meditation play a role in channeling that message?
Fun fact, I know Pastor Dutton since I was a little boy. I grew up a Seventh-day Adventist. So hearing his point of view on the matter is nothing strange to me. So I grew up with a very strong spiritual background. So connection with the divine is nothing strange to me. I don't need any drug to connect to my spiritual source. That's something that's been instilled in me as a child. So in terms of inspiration to create music, it's really inspiration to find the best vehicle for the message. The message comes first. So whatever the message tells me to do, I am obedient to the message. All right, so I don't rely on any drug or process per se in order to create music. If that makes sense. But where I am on the issue of using marijuana creatively, I'm not against it.
All right.
Midnight has a song called Earth Cycle Now a Rasta, and I love that song because the opening line says, only when a lion is already Zion bound, Herb will take him there. Yeah. You have to set your intention on what you want to do. And then whether you want to drink a glass of wine, whether you want to meditate, whether you want to talk to somebody that you love, whatever your process is, that intention is already set. So if we want to reverse engineer that, drugs don't make people do stupidness. Negative thoughts and negative energy is what does propel people to act negatively. Drugs might assist in the journey there, but it's not the cause.
Yeah, I like how you quote Midnight on that track. I'm a big Midnight fan as well, so I know the track ever so well. You know what I mean? So you're touching. I like the way you look at it.
Yeah,
that's a nice angle. I love that. I listen. Go ahead. You know, I tune right now.
I just wanted to get your thoughts on Trinidad post decriminalization. You know, there's been talk for so long about taking this step, and well, the government went through with it. From your observations, what do you think of TNT post decriminalization in terms of the sort of the climate, the environment? Do you think some people have the perspective that it's too much of a free-for-all? These people smoking every day. The other day we saw a video of someone smoking in Movie Town, I believe it was.
Yeah, one of them cinemas, correct.
Yeah.
A madness.
Do you believe that it's a progressive move, or do you think it's a backward step in other ways?
I would start by saying there's a lot that is happening behind the scenes that the citizens aren't aware of. So when legislators come together to make an important decision like that, it's not only influenced by the private sector and how businesses could benefit from that. You're also looking at the relationship of declassifying drugs as it pertains to the criminal justice system. So post decriminalization, we also have to look at the effect of not having a set of young black men being arrested and held for long periods of time and being introduced to other harmful elements that wasn't part of their lifestyle before being incarcerated. So looking at that angle, it is a progressive move. Okay.
But then again, sorry to cut you there, like what we had the queen of Canadian pot who was on with us a little earlier on, and she expressed some of what you said there, but then she also went on to talk about the prohibition laws, meaning the way we operating now. So yes, they may have taken a lot of things out of the court, but then they now, within decriminalizing, put some ridiculous new fines. So something that might have been $2,500 before decriminalization is now $250,000.
I think what you were making there is profound, though, because I mean, a lot of the times it might be somebody's first offense. That, as you rightly said, I mean, from my experience in the court, Sonny, you'd be surprised. Like when you actually watch a man see her before you reach up to murder, it might have started with possession of simple marijuana, and as a result, a result of that could cause a chain reaction. I mean, it might be so in all cases. It might have some bad apples in the basket, but a man can't get a job now. So naturally, you have to align with certain kind of job. Your life over, or a visa. So as a result, you know, that might, in some cases, might lead them down that path of, well, I'd hustle on the block. And one thing lead to another, and bad company lead to, and so it may go. So I mean, it at least it takes away that first stage. Your first offense ain't gonna be that. I mean, so let be something violent if it had to be.
Yeah. I mean, the goal is not to attempt to have a utopic society. That's impossible. But as a society, you want to try to keep abreast of changing human behaviors and what we need to do to balance. I remember when you could have a little 5-piece of weed and the police would hold you and beat you and lock you up. And before you appear before a magistrate, if you had locks, they will cut it.
Yeah.
Progressively, we have moved away from that. And it's not just because people smoking more marijuana. There's an entire change in attitude and behavior towards viewing marijuana as a hard drug. So I think it is progressive for society to not view marijuana like we would view opium, heroin, or cocaine, because it is primarily different from all those other drugs. But also, and this is controversial, it is we call it a drug because of the psychoaffective effect it has on the brain, right? So let's just loosely call it a drug. But it is the only substance, before it got into the hands of the legal system, the community regulated it. The community is quite competent in regulating it. I mean, I come from a small village in Tobago called Pembroke, right? You always had your few delinquent youths. And I didn't grow up around no Rastas per se. When I say Rastas, people who belong to mansions of Rastafari. No, you had older men with dreadlocks, and we used to call them roots men, right? These men were men of high morals, and they wouldn't stand for no youth men sitting on no block smoking.
Correct.
So the community, I don't want us to also take that away from the community and make it sound as though we are unable to regulate ourselves.
You could even compare
a healthy functioning community will regulate itself properly.
But then, Lou, there's the opinion that the sense of community in the country has deteriorated.
That is what we have to address.
Because what I was saying there now is that you could even compare that to maybe similarly the Susu long time, because Susu was a community thing, and nowadays, because of the fallout, all of a sudden, Susu get banned. That ain't good again. But that was something that the community held together and made sure we all eat a little and live long, and it was something that was regulated and done right. Yeah. So I understand what you're saying, the community regulations.
But I do think that there's a fair assumption, just to respond directly to what you say. I think that there's an assumption fueled by fear that the spike in recreational use that we see right after decriminalization is either going to continue ascending, and it is going to descend into chaos, which we have no numbers to support. We have no data to support that society actually behaves in that way. Or we believe that post-decriminalization, all good sense will go out through the window. I would say, though, that post-decriminalization, there is a softer gateway for adolescents and teens to have access to marijuana. And I say softer access because general access always existed.
Correct.
Right? We could agree on that. Because back in my days, schoolboys were smoking and selling weed too. You understand? So what I would like to see a bit more emphasis on is education to accompany the access to recreational use of marijuana.
Well, let's stick a pin in it right there. This is Heights where knowledge grows. Quick commercial break. We're going to come back with some more. Hope you guys are enjoying our conversation this evening on your Indian arrival holiday.
Slam 100.5 and Sangit 106.1 FM gives you a taste of India during.
Welcome back to our program, guys. This is Heights where knowledge grows. Joshua.
Slam 100.5 FM, Freedom 106.5, and the hosts of this program do not advocate the sale, distribution, or transportation of cannabis, especially for persons under the age of 18.
Yes, we want to bring in Nicole Buffong, our good friend Nicole Buffong, who's US-based, and she's part of the Minorities for Medical Marijuana, the organization we want to bring into the conversation. Nicole, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, of course, definitely. Nicole, good. I just want to start off by bringing you in. We've seen this, development in terms of the industry in America. It seems like every week a different state is legalizing. From a minority perspective, though, are we seeing any changes in terms of increases in terms of minorities owning legal cannabis businesses?
I wish. First, I'd like to say thank you again for having me on the show. It's been great. So congratulations on season 2. I think it's amazing you all spreading the information and the knowledge to the people. That is how we are going to destigmatize cannabis and using it as medicine and getting involved with the business aspect of it. It's through education that we're going to break down those barriers. So thank you all for the work that you're doing there on the ground in Trinidad. So back to your question. No, unfortunately, there hasn't been much change as far as percentages of CEOs that are owning businesses in this industry. The number actually went down in the last 2 years significantly from almost maybe just under 20% to just under 13%, I think it was. And that's for people that are in executive roles within these licensed dispensaries and licensed organizations or businesses, I should say. And in the executive and the C-suite, there are hardly any women, any people of color in general.
So Nicole Otto here. Welcome back to Heights Season 2. Tell me something, Nicole. With this revelation that you're revealing here, I mean, from the Minorities for Marijuana organization, what advocacy you would see? Because when we hear these things happening in the mighty United States of America, we sometimes get afraid and frightened because we are, in our legislation here, we are, following a lot of the style that is used in the first world countries. What would you say is a level of, protection and in for us here? And also, what is the advocacy that you're taking in the sense of where you are on the ground in the U.S.?
So I'll start with the first part of your question. What can communities that are trying to, or countries that are trying to come online and do it responsibly, how can they make sure that they're not leaving out those that have been most marginalized, those that have been most harmed by the prohibition? How do you give reparations, so to speak? You got to think about first the people that are still sitting in prison. So when you start creating this legislation as a community, as a country, the people that live in this country, you have to understand the power of lobbying. You have to understand how to speak to these officials that are making these decisions and give recommendations of what legislation should say. So, things like making sure people's records are expunged. That's, making sure that you have some form of reparations. That's vital and key, because like other countries, they're going to establish a regulated and legal system that's going to say, if you have any past felonies, if you have any past arrests, then you can't even get in the business. You can't get in the business at the lowest level. So it's little things like that as they're creating the legislation that you have to pay attention to, and you have to make sure that you are participating. You're showing up at every meeting, public hearing, whatever that looks like, to give recommendations of what that language needs to say around social justice. And making sure that you're repairing the community that you've harmed for so many years. And then as an organization, Minorities for Medical Marijuana, we just had our lobby days up in DC. About 30 of us in DC during 420 week. We met with over 200 of our elected officials there with the same message of sensible cannabis and hemp policy. When we think about the cannabis plant, we understand that we're speaking to some legislators that are saying no way to cannabis as medicine, not even going to hear it, but are saying yes to hemp, and saying yes to industrial hemp because they see the money and the potential that it has for their state, and mostly for creating jobs because they understand. And so when we're looking at the plant wholly, we have to make sure that that they understand that it is one plant. And by legalizing the medicinal side of it and allowing people to use it as medicine opens up our opportunities for more research so we can understand what the plant does. So having to present that case as part of our lobbying and advocacy efforts, reminding them that the reason that we cannot find the right research, or the reason that research already exists, it exists in other countries, but the United States insists that they must do their own research, just like any other country. They want to have their own white papers and their own research done on this plant. And so we know that the research is already out there, but they have to determine it for themselves. And if we can't get it out of a Schedule I filing, if we can't get it decriminalized, then how are we going to even access it? How our research is going to access it to be able to do the testing? And so that as a lobbying group, as an advocacy group, because we're not a lobbying group, we're not a lobbying firm, we're a nonprofit organization, Minorities for Medical Marijuana is, we advocate for a sensible policy that's going to help those communities that have been most marginalized. We also think about farmers, Black farmers, that are turning a lot of their tobacco and cotton fields and whatever else they grew into hemp fields, and understanding how to be a part of that side of the industry. So we as an organization provide those resources, those programs to help people understand how to be a part of this lucrative business. Another one of our programs that we strongly encourage our communities and those communities that have been most affected and harmed, they don't have the capital to get into this cannabis space. Even if they got a license, you still need significant amount of capital to compete with the big boys that are happening here. So a lot of these social equity licenses are failing because they don't have the capital to support them. They might have gotten it at a cheap rate, but it's not sustainable. And so what we are encouraging communities that have been harmed the most, one of our programs is called Emprocure. And what Emprocure does is it teaches our community about the supply chain of the cannabis industry. A lot of us aren't thinking about that. A lot of people want to jump on these licenses that cost $2 to $4 to $5 million just to get the license, not to sustain it and make it profitable over 3 to 5 years, but just to get it. And they don't understand, or they're not looking at the supply chain side of that industry. If you're a cultivator in this space, you have to buy your nutrients from somebody. You've got to buy your pots from somebody. You've got to buy your lights that go into your cultivation space from somebody. Those are all vendors and part of the supply chain. Shout out to the Wadada sisters. I know they were on here last year when I was on, and I know that they have, a farming and supply a business, which is brilliant. That is part of the supply chain, and that's something that we encourage, because you don't need $2, $3, $4, $5 million to start one of those businesses or to apply to get one of those licenses. All you have to do is have the right business sense about you. And so encouraging those communities that don't have the capital, don't have the resources, to look at the supply chain side of the business, because it's something that we could really dominate as a community. Just understanding what the needs are for these new licenses that are coming up. Like you said, every state, every week, every month, it seems like somebody else is coming online. That means they're going to need vendors and suppliers to help run their businesses. So that's just one of many programs that we are encouraging and showing our communities there are other ways to get into this space.
And I just want to pull Lou back into the conversation. Lou, there's this big issue of equity in any legal cannabis market from the States, Canada, and of course, that conversation is already taking place in Trinidad and Tobago. Given that we've seen so many industries in the past in Trinidad and Tobago where there's certain issues have arisen in terms of a certain percentage of people dominating the industry at the expense of others, how important is it to have equity in the Trinidad market on this particular issue, in your opinion?
Very important. As my sister said there, it is inherently unjust for a product that was once illegal and exposed the community to so much risk of injustice to now be made legal and afford large corporations unfettered opportunity to become even richer without looking at the impact that it will have on the communities that bore the risk for generations.
Yeah, and should there be a space for creatives as well? When people think about cannabis, Caribbean often comes to mind, and that's largely because of musicians. We know the long list of musicians, and of course, the farmers who risked it all to continue farming despite the law. How important is it because we spoke to some other artists from Jamaica, and they said they've been left out. Even though some of their songs help carry that culture, they have been left out from the industry. They don't have a space. How important is it to make sure that Caribbean creatives have a space in this industry?
It's very important, and that's just going back to one of the earlier points. When we talk about putting emphasis on education, that is what we're also talking about. We're also talking about how do we expose to the community how the legal system will continue to be an instrument of big lucrative business if we don't lobby for legal representation in a business sense. And I guess that's where my concern is. My concern is I have witnessed a lot of farmers become agro-scientists overnight, because cannabis is unlike any other plant. It is so sensitive that your learning curve could teach you how to farm other crops if you get cannabis right. So you have these farmers who are putting in investment out of pocket money, and they are supporting their communities with information, but they don't have the big capital to support their own communities. And it is unjust for them to be left out simply because they lack the information, they lack the capital, but also they are not being factored in legislation and in regulations.
And Nicola, of course, your partner and your mother is listening in. Do you have any plans to start a chapter in Trinidad and Tobago and to raise awareness of these very issues and to educate?
Well, of course. So right now, Minorities for Medical Marijuana is in 27 states here domestically in the United States, and we have 5 chapters internationally. So we are in Puerto Rico, the UK, Canada, Belize, and Jamaica. And so, yes, Trinidad is definitely on the list, especially after I joined the team about 5 years ago. We definitely would like to find some leadership on the ground there. I've worked very closely with my brothers over at Cannabis and You. Shout out to Javed and to my brother. Oh, I cannot think of his name right now. But there are already organizations on the ground there working very closely with lobbying efforts and advocacy efforts. And so I'm proud to be able to work closely with them. They, Cannabis and You invited me down to speak at the legalization rally in Trinidad and Tobago back in 2019. And I met another advocate, many other advocates there, including Reverend Kwame Kamau. I know that he has been a guest of the show as well. And so there are silos working within the communities there in Trinidad already. And honestly, getting back on the ground there would probably be key to me being able to find the right leadership for what we want to do in Trinidad as you all come online. And another thing I wanted to add to what the brother was saying, those Rastafarian communities and tribes have been the most harmed when it comes to the Caribbean, just because of the region, because they have been the keepers of the genetics for so long. And when it comes to legalization in a country that affects a community that is so direct, I think it is important that we make sure we include them in the conversation as legalization comes online. They know the land, they know the plants, and I don't want to see what I've seen happen in places like South Africa, where they are forced to bring in genetics from Germany. I call them colonized genetics, colonized seeds. They're forced to bring in those genetics from another country, from a European country, in order to try to grow hemp in their own country, instead of just using the land-raised genetics that are there. And I think that we are missing, and this is what your legislators, most legislators don't understand, what most elected officials don't understand, is how valuable what your own genetics are. Instead of trying to go out elsewhere, figure out what your own genetics can do. Let it grow indigenously on the land where it comes from, and then let the research begin so we can determine who's growing the best that can cure cancer and cure HIV. Like there's a plant out there for that. And it's all about the research and educating ourselves in order to find that and make sure that those genetics also get credited back to the family and the tribes that have kept them alive for so long.
I like how you said that there, Nicole. Well, thank you so much for being a part of our program here this evening, and invite you again to come speak with us. It's always a pleasure having you on board here with us on Heights where knowledge grows. And continue doing your work, continue your efforts, continue your stride, and continue doing it nice and with all that grace and style, if you want to put it that way. And of course, again, we have to say good evening to your mom, who is tuned in because her daughter is on the program this evening. So you want to say hi to mommy?
Oh, hi, Mommy. I hope that you are enjoying your trip in Trinidad. Me and the puppies are great, and I will see you soon. Thank you again, Heights. I really appreciate all the work you all are doing on the ground there, and I look forward to seeing you soon in person.
All right.
Thanks again, y'all.
Thanks
Take
again
care.
for being on the program. We're going to continue with some more right here. We have our Grow Guru segment coming up right after the break, and we're going to find out what's happening musically with Freetown when we return. This is Heights where knowledge grows. We're getting ready to jump inside Grow Guru. We have teacher Mark and teacher Derek on the inside. Of course, this is a chance where you get to call us up and win some cool prizes as well. This evening, we're giving away a TDS tester, boy. Derek, before we get heavy into the program with you guys, tell us, what is a TDS tester?
It's test the concentration of like nutrients within the liquid that you plan to apply. Yeah, essentially.
Basically, TDS stands for total dissolved solids.
Right.
Kind of self-explanatory.
Okay.
If you think about it.
All right, so we're giving away a TDS tester this evening. Let's get back into our conversation here. We'll do quickly before we move into that Grow Guru segment. What's the latest with Freetown? What do you call it? A band or group?
A band.
A band, right. Good. So what is the latest with Freetown? What's next on the horizon?
All right, so we have a couple of smaller events that we are planning. We call them tight spaces. People who come post Feely Love, after Feely Love may not know that's how we started. We started by doing performances to 20, 30, 40 people, and we did that over the years until we cultivated our core audience. So one of the things that we maintain is, even though we can do big shows, we go back down to those tight spaces. Okay. So the first one is actually sold out, which is next Wednesday. We have two more. Don't want to give too much information out because we already have a marketing.
You might have the same people buy all the same tickets again one time.
Could be.
So
But if you want to find out more information, follow We Are Freetown on Instagram, Freetown Collective on Facebook, and stay in touch. We're also preparing to do a tour of London in August. We have a performance to commemorate UB40's, I think, 50th year in existence.
Yes, I was going
So
to
we
get that.
are,
I saw some things online
Yeah.
about you're doing some opening or something.
yeah, so we are opening act for that celebration concert.
How does that feel
in
though?
the
You get
UK.
when you get a call to open for UB40. You know what I mean? As being a musician many years in the game, and you know, would you consider this, because you all have been on many shows so far, many big shows. What would you say this is like maybe one of the biggest?
That's yet to be seen, but yeah, on paper it looks so.
Yeah.
But when we go there, we'll definitely make the best of the opportunity. But it just goes to show that there is an appetite for Caribbean music, and as a musician here in Trinidad and Tobago, you just have to be serious about your business, serious about your craft, and yeah, put stake in what you're doing and represent it well.
Last question before we go. What is one thing you'd like the people to take away from Freetown Collective? When you hear Freetown, what is that one thing you'd like people to come to mind? What should come to mind?
One alone boy?
Yeah, let's try to get into one. Yeah, let's try to get into one. You can put three if you want.
No, I'll do two. The first is community. People are important to us. Without people, we wouldn't exist. Literally, and every artist will say that. But to make it very real, Trinbagonians don't really have a tolerance for anything that is not excitement and not soca.
We do appreciate it.
Anything that is not party.
Don't the soca and all them mightn't take on in
Yeah, so even some people in soca that come real good. So to be in existence for over 10 years doing folk music, not popular music, we literally have our community to thank for that.
Correct.
And the second one I want to leave everybody with is we work hard to make sure our space is a neutral space. I don't want to use the word safe space because there are some implications that are not equipped to defend at this moment.
Okay.
But it is a neutral space where if your intention is to respect somebody else the way you want to be respected, Freetown is a place for you.
All right, that is that. Thanks so much for being a part of the program here this evening,
man.
guys. This
Thanks
is
for having
Heights,
me.
where knowledge grows. We slide one time into the Grow Guru segment, all courtesy 1212 Grow Shop. I see the phone lines blazing, so I don't know if you want to toss the question at them.
Take a call.
One time. Hi, good evening. Welcome to the program. You're live. Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, good evening. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Are you here to win our prize this evening, or TDS tester?
Yes.
Oh, you are? Okay, good. So I have a question for you all courtesy the Grow Guru team and the 1212 Grow Shop. Your question is, what is topping? How do you top a plant?
What is topping?
What is topping? Like topping? Topping. Topping.
Well, thinking when you're saying toppings, I'm thinking what, topsoil? You top it up with soil?
You're going to have to give someone else a try there. Thanks for calling 624-155-623-5001. That's your question right now. What is topping? How do you top a plant? You know that one, right? Let's have a talk with teacher Derek and teacher Mark. Let's go.
Yeah, today our topic today is on pests. We in the season when they love to come out, especially for the outdoor growers out there. This is specifically aimed at you guys. While it can affect indoor plants as well, also too. Don't think it can't, but outdoor growers are really the most susceptible to that.
Yeah, and this time of year they're out in abundance. They're seeking shelter under your leaves.
Yeah. So I mean, Mark, tell us a little bit of pests.
Before you tell us, take that call. We have a giveaway. Good afternoon. Good evening. You're live. Hello.
Hello.
Yes, sir. TDS tester can be yours. What is topping? How do you top a plant?
Break off the other, cut it off, right?
We have a winner.
Nice.
We have a winner.
Congratulations.
We have a winner.
Just like that, you're a winner. Just like that, you're a winner. Just like that. Congratulations one time. Joshua, come around and check. Go in front here. Sir, are you still in the line?
Yes.
All right, hold the line. We're going to take your contact information off your here right now. Don't go nowhere. Hello. All right, so gentlemen, continue with our conversation.
So back to the conversation. To me, as somebody who experimented with outdoor in the early days, since decriminalization, to me, pests is one of the worst things you could encounter. I mean, mold and fungus is another topic for another day, but pests It's something that could keep you up at night.
I would
even
have
thinking
to
about
agree
it.
with you 100%.
It is the worst thing to deal with outside.
And I mean, we live in a tropical climate here in Trinidad, so I mean, we face a wealth of pests there. So we talk about spider mites, aphids, stink bugs. You'll be surprised how much stink bugs love.
They get inside your flowers. And
Yes, and they like to mate, and they like to bite your stems. So caterpillars is the next one. I mean, caterpillars, you'll be surprised. You think the pretty butterflies flying around your nice outer buds as they're developing, but when they land on them, they lay their eggs, and you have caterpillars eating through your bud, and it's no good anymore.
And they're almost impossible to see. They're right in front of you and you can't see.
Yeah, because they camouflage themselves well into the bud. So
but Derek, pest control is a broad topic. Like a lot of people they use a lot of different things.
I mean, it's everybody has their own idea, but I mean, generally speaking, to me, the rule of thumb is that, I mean, it's not vegetables. Tomatoes, sweet peppers, these things, they all come with a skin that you can wash out before you consume. When you're producing cannabis, it's flowers which you smoke. Generally speaking, I mean, there are other ways to consume it, but generally speaking, it's through smoking. I mean, so, some of the chemicals that you'll be used to spraying on your tomatoes or your sweet pepper or your baygon, it might not necessarily be suited to cannabis.
Right. It will soak into your buds and some sort of residue going to remain there.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are organic options available out there that have varying degrees of success. If you visit like our sponsor 1212 Grow Shop, there's a wealth of many organic pesticides, such as the ones that come with neem. There are many in the market which the listeners out there could go and try. I mean, any normal agri shops as well also too. But I think generally speaking, the rule of thumb is that if it's in flower, sprays are known.
Right. I would like to back up from flower back into veg. Let me tell you right now, prevention is the best cure. Don't wait to see pests. Weekly pest management, especially in this season.
I can start from removing the infected leaves. So when you see sometimes you see some spots on the leaves, that's spider mites eating away at the bottom.
Correct.
So removing them and then spraying them in most cases.
Well, you know what? Let me ask some questions here right now. Let me be the layman and ask the questions here right away. How soon do I start to look for pests? Okay, since about 3 weeks ago when we were here, remember we had a guest that came through, dropped off a little plant that still might be in a cup in there.
Yeah.
The point is, how soon do you look for pests then?
Well, when you get there.
From as early as now.
From as early as
Alright, and some of the signs you mentioned that the bottom leaves with the little holes, you said,
yeah, so generally
speaking,
most of the pests that we deal with attack the leaves. Some deal with the stems, so like the stink bugs love the stem, they suck.
The sap.
The sap from the stem, so basically.
Same thing you might do under the leaves, they suck the sap from the leaves.
They suck the sap. But okay, so for instance, like with spider mites, spider mites, they will eat tiny little portions, but suck from on the leaves. But if you allow a spider mite problem to get infested, even in veg, it looks like a cobweb over your plant, essentially. Yeah. Over all the bud, it could be all over the stem.
Completely covered.
Completely covered, and basically the plant is going to stunt and it's not going to reach the maximum potential. And if you're in flower, the bud is not going to be really smokable because it could wash it, but that's a topic for another day. But essentially, you really don't want to be smoking it when it reaches too far gone. So, as Mark said, prevention is better than cure. Always look, and you usually see it on the leaves. I mean, with me for stink bugs, when I used to grow outdoor, I went around with a jar with bleach and a pen, and hitting them straight into the jar. I mean, I could not find anything that could attack stink bugs that could really, without going into the strong chemical domain. I mean, it all depends on, I guess, where you're located as well also too. So, like, if you tend to live next or planting your plants near to like a big bushy area, or sometimes even next to farmland, basically if they spray, the bugs can come across by you. Yeah, you can go ahead.
How about ants?
Ants generally attack too. You can put cayenne pepper around the rim of the pot, so the ants wouldn't really cross it.
Peppermint oil is another one.
Yeah.
Peppermint oil really strong. Insect as small as an ant, as soon as they get close to that peppermint oil around the edge of the pot.
Yeah, I mean, they are all like, I mean, for some of the bugs, diatomaceous. I can't remember how to pronounce it. That is really silica based. So basically, the bugs, the crawling ones anyway that will live in the soil will eat it. it's a powder, it's sprinkled around the pot, and they would eat it, and it basically, because of how silica the molecule is basically, it cuts up the insect, basically destroys it.
And the ones with the exoskeleton, hard shell insects, which spider mites are, even though they're just so small, we can't really see it. Once they touch that silica, it basically dries them out. It dries out everything.
Yeah. So the pest control methods that you use, the pest control methods that is available at the market, how do they affect the microbial activity in the soil that the plant also needs in its roots?
Well, good question. I mean, depending on the bugs that you have, I mean, a soil drench might be necessary, like for fungus gnats and stuff like that. But if you're thinking microbial, basically you're thinking more along the organic line. So I would suggest if you're growing more organically, that might be more of a consideration. If you're using chemical and you're flushing like most persons do, basically you could get away with different kind of chemicals. Again, I would recommend in flour. But there's a product called Dr. Zymes, our sponsor sells it. It's magical Dr. Zymes actually. It's an enzyme that basically attacks pests and fungus as well also. So that one is really what you're really looking at, because that one is safe in terms of the microbial. It could drench the soil with it, and it will be
the exterior of the plant, you could drench it.
Yeah, it's very safe. The only thing with
commercial with it, I remember you ever saw the one where the guy drank a cup of it. That's how safe it is. It's completely safe, and from using it, it works.
It works. So there are organic solutions out there, but I mean, they, to be honest with our listeners, they are quite expensive.
These type of products, like the one we just recommended, Dr. Zymes, they are a bit pricey compared to what you would find
in an agri shop.
Right, correct.
Typically for tomatoes and stuff like that.
They're specialized. It's more of a specialized product. It's not a broad product that people just gonna use on everything. That's it right there.
Yeah. So basically, I think the key is before you put a plant in the floor, because I mean we spoke to our listeners previously that we can control based on giving the plant extra light, giving it 6 hours extra light or even more on any normal light bulb outside your house, or in a tent where you could control your hours the lights comes on and off. The key is to address these pest problems before you want to flip the plant in the floor, because once flower starts and you're kind of limited in terms of how much you could attack the problem then, and you kind of at its mercy to an extent. And there's nothing a worse feeling as I've brought to me than basically this plant is taking, it's in the 4 week 5 of flower and it's looking beautiful, only to see a spider web, or to see a pest there. So attack it first, but at the end of the day, it's not the end of the world. If you could do all these things, you could still have a little pest on the outdoor crop. It's not going to be perfect. That's if you want perfection, generally speaking, you have to go.
Personally, Derek, I recommend always washing outside, but anyway, even if you didn't see
that's a topic for another day, listeners. Yeah. Washing your bud, you can actually wash your bud safely. Like the buds of the plant, to get rid of dirt, especially in an outdoor setting, and little bugs and eggs and larvae and stuff like that are in there.
So this is another installment of the Grow Guru segment right here on Slam on 0.5 and also Freedom 106.5 FM as part of the Heights program. Teacher Derek and Teacher Mark, they always have the know-how as to how you can improve on what you're doing, or basically long shot is all about improvement here. And this evening our topic was pests. Pests this evening. We have to say congratulations to our winner who called in about the TDS test. So your question was what is stopping, and you got that absolutely correct. And of course, each and every week we're going to have giveaways from the 1212 Grow Shop. So make sure and tune in again. Next Tuesday is one of the last programs that we tend to do, last segments we tend to do inside of our program. So we thank you guys for being here with us again. You have another question you want to toss in real quick with Teacher Mark and Teacher Derek, as you have them at your mercy here right now?
Yeah, I know washing is a topic for another day. Generally, you wash before harvest or after harvest?
No, after harvest. After harvest, it basically, well, Mark will break it down to you after this because we'll save it for another show, but essentially...
Yeah, put in some points. If you want to just wrap on that, but put in some points. Put in some points. So
basically, washing is immediately after harvest. When you cut that plant, you want to wash it. You're going to have 3 different solutions. I ain't going to get into detail because it'll take long. But with those 3 solutions, you basically get any pests, any residual pesticide, and any dirt and debris and stuff like that. You can tell a major difference between a washed bud and an unwashed bud from the same plant. You won't get all that popping and stuff from the debris and stuff when it's burning. That is just one big thing. But it does not affect the quality. If it's done properly, the quality of your bud to me is even better, because there is no foreign material in your flowers that will break down. But once that's dead, it's biodegradable, or all this stuff from in the air that your flowers picked up because they
Especially when it's Sahara, that's something you'll be surprised how dirty that water would get when you actually wash out
buds drying. Those things are actually affecting those buds in a negative way. That's why you get loss of color and things look brown and stuff like that.
Okay, we learned something serious yesterday, y'all. This is Heights, where knowledge grows right on Slam 100.5. Teacher Mark, Teacher Derek, Lou Lions, all the Free Talk Collective still on the inside as well. Thank you, gentlemen, very much for being a part of the program. We're going to shut things down here right now. We went a little over this evening. Of course, we had to make sure delivering just for you, all right? 10 minutes after 8 o'clock. Thanks for tuning in right here on Slam 100.5 and Freedom 106.5 FM. Thanks to our sponsors, Royal Extra Stout and 1212 Grow Shop, for being a part of the Grow Guru segment as well. All of our guests, international and otherwise, thank you so much for being a part of the program. This is it for us here. Until next Tuesday, with the kind compliments of Heights. When knowledge grows, make sure and check us out.